I've met so far is so nice and so kind. And, well, you guys seem to have something really great here. So I'm really glad to be here and be a part of it tonight. And yes, I did fly all the way here in my Mustang. Gosh, so my sobriety date is April 21st of 2006. So in a couple months here, I'll turn 18 years sober, which is crazy. And just to save you the math, because it's the weekend, you're off work, I got sober at 23, about to turn 24. I'm 41 now, so now that we've gotten that out of the way. I come from a long line of alcoholics. I have my grandfather's big book that was passed down to my dad, that was passed down to me. It's our family heirloom. I know some of you fine folks, you guys look like nice people. You probably have heirlooms like war medals and stuff. Not the Maynard family. We have a big book. And I'm the current keeper of the family heirloom. It's in my apartment in a plastic box, so it's nice and safe. And this is just how we roll in my family. There's this old Hank Williams song, it's a family tradition. And if you don't know it, if you didn't recognize it, it goes like, Hank, why do you drink? Why do you smoke? Da, da, da. It's a family tradition. That's my family. So I'm from Tennessee originally, and then I lived in Tennessee, Alabama, and Arkansas. People ask me a really amazing question. It's a question I really like. When they find out I'm from the South, they say, were you a debutante? I'm like, well, thank you. Because I have a lot of blonde hair, I smile a lot, and 18 years later, the women of Alcoholics Anonymous have taught me some manners. And so I could pass for a debutante today. And my answer to that is, no, honey, I was a hillbilly, we were poor. So I come from a really poor Southern family, and living at 4, 5, and 6 years old in a one-bedroom apartment with my mom, my grandma, my sister, and, just watching all this, right? So both of my parents are alcoholic, and by then my dad had moved out to Los Angeles, and we're living with my mom in Little Rock, Arkansas. And some of my first memories are, I didn't know what this liquid was, but she would keep this clear liquid in the freezer. I now know that it's vodka. And when it would come out, bad stuff would happen. And so at 4, 5, and 6 years old, I would get out my little ladder for the kitchen, and I would climb up on my ladder and pull these bottles out of the freezer, and I would pour them down the drain. And now I know alcoholics gasp, but I know. I didn't know how mean that was. I love my mommy. I would never hurt her. I didn't know. But I just thought, I was a logical kid, right? And I was like, remove the problem, right? If this thing makes bad things happen, pour it down the drain. And so I would do that to just try to stave off. And I hid in the closet a lot as a little girl because scary stuff would happen. My mom pretty much every night would pass out with burning cigarettes. And so I'd wait in the closet until she'd fall asleep so that I could put them out. So she didn't burn down our house, and she had boyfriends that would beat her up. And I used to hide in the closet and watch all this, and I was so scared. And we didn't know, it was like the early 80s, right? We didn't know, and we were trying to call my dad in California and figure out how to get in touch with him to come get us. And I remember watching all this stuff. So my mom, where she's from, like a poor Southern family, right? She didn't have an education. I don't remember her ever working. All she wanted in the world was my sister and I. And I'm watching all this happen to her, and all this abuse, and I just thought, I'm never going to let that happen to me. And I set in my mind at a really young age that I'm going to do something with my life so that can never happen to me, because if I get an education and a bank account, nobody can hit me and I'm not going to die. And I can always leave if I want to. And so I clocked that as a little girl. My dad figured out what was going on in Arkansas, and he came to get my sister and I, and we moved out to Los Angeles. And I don't know if you guys remember that show, The Beverly Hillbillies, but that's essentially what it was. We packed up the truck, and we moved to LA. And poor little thing, I'm like 6 years old in this school in Burbank, California, where the celebrities live, and I'm like, hi, y'all, And I grew up, and my mom would come out and visit, and she was just getting sicker and sicker. And when I was 11 years old, she was in the hospital with cirrhosis of the liver. And the doctors told her if she didn't stop drinking, she was going to die, and she couldn't stop drinking. And as an alcoholic woman, what I want to let you know is that I completely understand. Because I believe that my mom had alcoholism, and I believe that she had lost the power of choice. And one thing, I am the product of really good sponsorship and really good therapy. And one thing neither group, thank God for them, one thing neither group has ever had to teach me, and I'm so grateful for this, is that I know my mom wanted my sister and I more than anything in the world. If she could have chosen us, she would have. I didn't have children when I got here because I was a child, although I realize I do the math. I was 23. I guess I could have had children, but I just didn't. And but I know that I would have. I wouldn't have wanted to. I would have wanted to choose them. But looking at my behavior patterns and the way that I was when I walked in here, there's no way I could have. And I would have really wanted to. And so when she died, the reason I tell you about it is that I vowed that I was never, ever going to drink. I didn't want anything to do with alcohol. I became phobic of it. And when it would touch my hands, I would have to wash my hands, and I hated it because it killed my mom. And I was like, I'm never going to drink. And I set out to live this really big life that I felt like my mom didn't get to live, because if I can get an education and a bank account, nobody can hit me and I'm not going to die. And I was the first person in my family to go away to college. And my dad had been doing really well in business by this time, but nobody had been to college. Nobody had taken the SATs, like nothing like that. And I went away to school in San Francisco. Now, let me get this out of the way. So my dad looks just like Rod Stewart. I'll show you a picture after the meeting. We should project it, actually. He's a hoot. And people in AA that are my Facebook friends, like when they become my Facebook friends, they're like, oh my God. I'm like, I know, it's weird. So when I say Rod Stewart, I mean my dad, who is in fact not Rod Stewart, although if we called him and asked him if he were, he might say yes. So Rod Stewart drives me up to San Francisco to go to college. Now, I'm not from a normal family, as I've just told you. Is anyone in here from a normal family? There's usually a few. Amazing. Okay, you guys can tell me after the meeting. I imagine in normal families, when you bring your children to their normal college, you say something normal. Like, good job, kid. We'll see you at Thanksgiving. Here's some money, right? Not Rod Stewart. He's packing me into college, right? And he gets this super serious look on his face, and he looks like terrified. And I'm like, Dad, what's going on? And he leans in really close, and he says, just run and don't look back. And I was like, okay, Dad. Like, what does that mean, right? And he didn't mean don't ever come home, but he was just in shock because he's like, we're not sure how you made it out of the dumpster fire that is the alcoholism of our family, but just run. Like, just go and be somebody and be something. And so I tried so hard, I spent my entire young life literally feeling like I was running. And not just because he said that, but that's just because that's the way that I operated. I was in such a hurry. I identify with Bill's story when he says, I'd prove to the world I was important. And I was just so busy trying to be somebody and be something and work so hard as, kind of to run away as fast as I could from this life that I came from. And I'm not saying my dad didn't provide a beautiful home for us, because once we moved to California, he absolutely did. That man is my hero. He worked his fingers to the bone every single night so that my sister and I lived safe and comfortable, and we never wanted for anything. Every single night that man was in his office in the house working so hard to provide for us and give us a beautiful, safe, and comfortable life, to try to normalize what we had come from, and I just set out to live this really big life. I always felt like, how a duck looks super peaceful gliding across the water, but their little feet are just like this underneath. Like, that was me all the time. Or like the Indiana Jones movie where the big ball is rolling behind him and he's just running. That was a Tuesday for me before I had a drink. Like, that was my normal state. And I tried so hard. I was the straight A student, the head of every organization on campus. Like, look at me, I'm okay. And I was going to go to law school after college, big plans. When I was 20 years old, I was home in Los Angeles for Christmas break. I was a junior in college, and I was with my friends, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to drink tonight. For me, what I realized happened is that I thought that this thing that my family struggled with was a question of willpower. And if it's a question of willpower, I've got it covered, because don't you know who I am? I'm this kid, and I was arrogant too, right? I'm 20 years old, a straight A student in a college, and I was arrogant. And I was like, I'm sorry for you, family, that you had problems with this liquid in the bottle, but I'll be fine. Because I'm this kid, I'm going to go to this law school, and I'm going to be somebody, I'm going to be something. Surely this beverage isn't going to take me down. I was wrong. I went from that half a drink to drunk every night almost immediately. And now it's so funny, right? You know, people, and I love, there are many members of our group that are we're high-functioning alcoholics. That was not my experience. I didn't function very long at all, and I'll explain it to you. And my dad, he'll tell you too, he was sober with me for a long time, and he'll tell you he was a high-functioning alcoholic because he was. We had cars in the driveway, houses, vacations. He showed up at work, like he flew home and like actually showed back up at the house. Like, this is all baffling to me because when I'm getting loaded, I have zero desire to function whatsoever. I don't want to go to your classes. I don't want to eat your food. I don't want to take your showers. I don't want to do anything that requires me to function as a normal human being. Because for me, I believe that I have alcoholism, and alcoholism demands treatment. If I leave it untreated today, it will be banging on the door as loud as it can. And that has happened. I can either treat it with alcohol in any form at all, whatever you want to call it, right? Or I can treat it with a 12-step solution. And I don't know anything about a 12-step solution yet because I've just started treating my alcoholism with alcohol, and it has a different effect on me than it has on other people. Who in this room has less than 1 year sober? I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. So our book, if it's your first time here with us, our book, the big book that we talk about all the time, does a very wonderful job of describing all these things that were happening to me when I started drinking and when I continued to drink. And I didn't know they were happening. I didn't know that I had what looked like an allergy to alcohol and that like I was exhibiting allergic symptoms when I would take it. I didn't know that I had what we call a spiritual malady, which is a spiritual sickness. And that's why when I found it, it felt like it answered a question that had been burning inside of me my whole life. And I just felt like if we can just do this every day for the rest of my life, then I might have a shot on this planet with the rest of you. And I didn't know that I had what we call in the book a mental obsession, which is why stone cold sober, every single time with nothing in my system, I get loaded again. Even when I don't want to, even when I've promised you that I'm not going to and I meant it. I get loaded one more time, and then I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but newcomers, I'm a big fan, so my sponsor will tell you she's a big book thumper. She literally hits the book. I like to identify as a big book enthusiast because I feel like it sounds more fairy-like. So we work in our family, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, line by line, word by word, page by page, and I believe in going through it with a trained sponsor that can make it come alive for us, and that's what I do for women, and they do that for other women, and so on and so on and so on. So I didn't know, though, until I really understood the big book, that that's what was happening for me during this time. By second semester senior year, I couldn't leave my university apartment, and I was living to get loaded. I was 21 units shy of a college degree, and I just couldn't get it together to show up anymore. And if you knew me at that time, this was alarming, right? And so sometimes I would leave the house, usually to go to the liquor store, and if you saw me during that time, you would stop me, right? And people would stop me and they'd be like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And they were like, "Well, you used to tutor me and you used to shower. Are you all right?" And I would say, "Thank you so much for your concern." And what I thought, and probably said sometimes because I was drunk, was, "I'll stop when I want to, and that day's not today." Because I thought that I had that power, and I felt so entitled, and I just felt like, back off. Leave me alone. Don't you know who I am? And you don't have any idea where I come from, and if you had been through what I've been through, you'd leave me alone right now. Because I deserve this, I earned it, and when I am done, I will put down the bottle and I will resume my place in this world and be everything that all of you guys want me to be, but right now just back off. And that's what I thought. And the book says that is what we do, right? We do that until we're a lone wolf. And I don't know that it's the disease taking over and that I'm pushing people away on purpose, because for me, what I believe is that my disease of alcoholism would like for me to be in a corner in the dark rocking back and forth alone. Like, and that's how, to newcomers too, I sometimes explain, like, how do I decide between, like, alcoholism and, like, a spiritual path? Like, what would that thought lead to? Does that thought lead you to be alone in a dark corner rocking back and forth wanting to drink? Or does it lead you to feeling, like, complete and connected in this world? And that's how I tell the difference between the two, especially when I was new. And so I would say that, right, and then I proceed on to the liquor store. I spent most of my second half of the senior year in the bathroom of my apartment. Did anyone else get loaded in the bathroom? For the rest of you liars, if you didn't, maybe you were more wealthy than I was. I was a college student, so I was kind of broke, and so I had to live with other people. And so I had my own bathroom, which was very great. And so I would lock the door to this bathroom. This is why we did it, because you could lock the door, you could set the lighting so it doesn't matter if it's day or night, or if it's been 3 days, nobody knows. And you could play whatever music. And so I spent my senior year of college in the bathroom singing the best slow jams of the late 90s and early 2000s into a wine bottle. Like Boys to Men, End of the Road, like all of it. And I was just feeling my feelings. And, that's when it was going well for me. And so that was my high point. And like I said, sometimes I would leave the house. One day I left the apartment at the university to go to the liquor store, and it was graduation day. And if I had known it was graduation day, there's no way I would have left, because I wouldn't have wanted to feel what I felt that day. And because I would tell you when you saw me that I'll stop when I want to, that day's not today, but I felt inside what our book says, which is that we often suspect that we're down for the count. Even though I would tell you that, I knew in my gut that this thing had me. You know, I knew it had me long before I would admit it to myself or I admit it to any of you. And so graduation day, I go down this big staircase in San Francisco, and these kids that I had tutored for 4 years were coming up in their caps and gowns with their families, and my heart broke into a million pieces. Because I knew as I watched them, I remember turning and watching them go up the stairs with their families, and I felt so sad. Because that was my life, and that's what I was supposed to have, and I was supposed to have that day. And it wasn't, and that's where the real truth comes in, right? Because I knew I would never have that. And my heart just crushed. And what do I do with a feeling like that? I go get more, and I try to pour more on to make it go away. When people tell me they don't want to talk to me anymore, when they lock their doors, when they tell me to stop coming around, when they tell me to stop calling, what do I do with that? I pour more on to try to make it go away. And I don't need you anyway, and I don't need this school, and forget all of you people. And that's what I had, and I moved home that summer thinking that I would maybe exert my willpower when I was ready, and I couldn't. You know, I don't know that I can't stop drinking until I try. Because that's the thing, even if I can stop, I can't stay stopped for any considerable a period of time on my own power, because I have that mental obsession, because every single time, it's like it takes over my body with nothing in my system, and I levitate out of my bed and I'm gone again. And this is the kind of kid I am. I told you, Rod Stewart's my hero, right? I mean, not the singer, my dad. I do like the singer as well, he's great. But my dad is my hero, and this is the kid that I am. You couldn't, and let me tell you this, you could not pay me enough money in the world to hurt that man. I would never do it. But this thing is a power greater than me, and it's controlling my body and my actions and everything about me, right? And this is how I am. I hurt everybody that gets in the way of me getting loaded. And it's not because I don't love you, and it's not because I don't care, and it's not because I want to hurt you. It's because this thing is a power greater than me, and it's literally moving my body, and I can't make another choice even though I want to. I'm gone they let me stay in their house, right, when I come home from college, and I've broken his heart, right, because I'm his kid that had gotten out, and I'm his kid that was going to graduate college, and here I am living in a bedroom in their house with no college degree and no hope of going back. And he's brokenhearted already, and I'm gone for months at a time. And I leave that man calling hospitals and jails to find out if his kid is dead or alive for months and weeks at a time. If that's not bad enough, I leave my car abandoned in parts of town with tickets piling up on it and dust all over it, so he thinks that I've been kidnapped or taken. And he doesn't know where I am. And then, because this is what I do, I slither back to their back door, and I come into their house after being gone for a few months, and I beg them to let me sleep there one more time. And I promise my dad that I'll never do it again, because I mean it. because if I had that power, I would never do it again. And I remember one time I had come home after being gone for a few months, and I remember that night because it was really cold outside, and they finally started locking the doors. And I waited out there, and he let me in. We went to dinner. He had tears in his eyes, and he said, "I'm so glad you're okay." And I said, "I know, Dad. I promise I'll never do it again." And I meant it. And that night at 3 in the morning, I got to go one more time. And I'm gone again, and I'm gone again, and this is what keeps happening. In March of 2005, I think the Al-Anons got a hold of my dad. Thank you very much for that if you're an Al-Anon. I literally would be dead if it weren't for you. And here's how I know. Because I was sleeping in somebody's house in some sort of dirty outfit somewhere in, I think, Palm Springs at the time. And I made my way around California. And I'm in Palm Springs, and I have one of those pay-as-you-go cell phones because I'm classy. And my dad left a message on it, and it said, "There's a bed for you at a treatment center when you're ready to get sober." Click. It didn't say, "I love you." It didn't say, "Come home for Thanksgiving. Do you need some money?" It just said, "Let me know if you don't want to die." You know? And I was like, I was 22 years old. I was a little tired, honestly. I needed a nap and a hamburger. And so I went to look at this place, and it looked really nice. And I was like, you know what? I think I'll go here. And so I was also, though, in full flight from reality. I kind of thought I was still at school. And so I packed up like I would for school. And I got my college bedspread and my matching rug and my pink suitcase, and I went to rehab. And I got in the room, and they gave me a cork board. I love a cork board. Give me a cork board, man. And so I started decorating my room like it was my dorm room, because I kind of thought it was. And so I hung my sorority letters on the wall, and I put my bedspread and my rug, and it was all beautiful. And these girls were coming by, and they were laughing. And I was like, right, it's fun here. And I was an orientation leader in college, so this was like natural to me. And I wish I had cookies, you know. I'm like, welcome to my room. And I didn't know that they were laughing at me because most of them had just paroled from prison. And so they named me Rehab Barbie. And don't worry, though, I wore them all down. And if you don't like me tonight, give me your number. I'll wear you down. We gonna be friends next week. I wore them all down. We played charades. We went on the little bus to meetings. And I was pretty sure you guys were going to elect me valedictorian of Alcoholics Anonymous soon because I'm still in school and I was going to get an A in AA. And but I didn't do any of the stuff you told me to do. That was a lot of work. And, I wasn't all there, you know, and at 58 days I was loaded. From March of 2005 to April of 2006, let me tell you this too, I never talk about this, but when I was in there, my dad wrote me a card every single day. Every day, I still have them. They're in a box in my apartment. He made me a box with his picture on the top for my cards that he would write me every single day. And thank God I didn't lose it when I got loaded and went back on the road. I thank God that I still had it, but he was so proud, and I broke his heart one more time. And from March of 2005 to April of 2006, it got really, really bad. Like I told you, I'm from a family that we tear through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous here. One thing I've always looked up, but I've never had to, is pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Because it was every single day of my life and every breath that I took before I walked in here. The best way I can describe it, especially for the newcomers, to let you know that I know, is how do you think that I get along and I survive out there and I have places to sleep and things to eat? You know, it's just what we do. And I lived like that. And you know, here's this kid, right? I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm everybody's pride and joy, and I'm living like this. You know, I'm just a dumb drunk girl in a dirty miniskirt, sleeping from place to place and couch to couch, rolling around this world waiting to die, really. You know, and I keep trying to stay stopped, and I can't stay stopped, and every single time I wind up on the floor going, how did I get here again? I wasn't going to do this time. By April 21st of 2006, I was sleeping again at my parents' house, and it was not long before they asked me to stop doing that because I would steal from them when I was there. And I made it scary for them. It was a scary place to live if I was in your house. And my dad came into my room because I'm sure he had been to an Al-Anon meeting, and he said, "What are you going to do because you can't do this?" And I said, "I guess I'll go back to that place." And he goes, "All right, that sounds like a good idea." And I went to that place, and I remember that night of April 21st, I was in a detox room by myself, staring up at this TV screen. I was 23 years old, about to turn 24, and everything inside of me felt like it had been ripped out. And I felt like a shell, and a hollow shell. I had no hope that it was ever going to be any different. I didn't check into a rehab center because I thought I could change my life. It was just where I was allowed to go. I didn't pick a day to get sober because I thought I was going to get sober, really. It was just somewhere that let me in. And I remember feeling the exact opposite of hope that night. I was ready to die because I didn't want to hurt that man anymore, and I didn't want to make him cry, and I didn't want to live that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization I had been living, and every time I tried to stop, I would fail. And so I just didn't want to be here anymore because I thought it would be easier on me and easier on everybody else if I would just go. And that's all I brought you on April 21st of 2006, a hopeless, scared little girl that had no way out. And I met women in that treatment center, and they had been where I had been, and their lives were different and better. And they told me, "I've been where you've been. I've done the things you've done, and I have recovered." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "If you want what we have, do what we do." And I didn't know, I was 23 years old, I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, "What do you mean I want what you have?" And they were like, "Do you want what you have?" And I was like, "No." So they're like, "Okay, then do what we do." And I'm like, "All right," and I started trying to put it together, and then they said to me the most important thing that I'm gonna tell you tonight, and this is the reason I'm alive. They said, "We have a way out, honey, if you want it, and it's outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous." I'm saying that for the newcomers. We have a way out if you want it, and it's outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I promise you, I am saying that from a position of knowledge, because not only have I gotten out through that way, but I've sponsored hundreds of women over the last 18 years, and they have all gotten out, and it's just there. I'm also saying that shoulder to shoulder with anybody that's got time and you feel messed up inside. We have a way out if you want it, and it's outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I say that from my own personal experience, because there have been times in the last 17 plus years, right, that I have needed a way out, that I have felt. One of my friends says it best. She says, "I don't grow and change when the rainbows are out and the sun is shining and it's a good day," right? I grow and change when my back's up against the wall and I don't have another choice. I think for me, over these years, what is living a sober life look like? And for me too, right? I got sober as a kid. I've also grown up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so growing up in sobriety, there have been some painful moments. Some moments where things hurt, where behaviors that I did hurt, where I stopped doing some things and that hurt. As a sponsor, one of the most popular phone calls I get is this: "Hey, sponsor." And I go, "Yes, baby," right? I don't feel good. Okay, what's going on? Well, I'm not doing this stuff, right? I haven't been going to the meetings. I haven't been picking anyone up. I haven't been reading the book with anybody. Okay, what do you think I say, right? I don't say, "Oh my God, you're terrible. You're the worst alcoholic that ever was. You should go sit in the corner," right? What I say is I go, "Okay, so start doing this stuff." Right? We just start doing this stuff again. But sometimes those moments and those emotional rearrangements for me have been the biggest growing experiences I've had in sobriety. I've had them all, right? Outside stuff. People die, my heart gets broken, my life falls apart, my life is in shreds. We lose jobs, we lose friends, we lose family. All kinds of stuff happens for me throughout a sober life. And it's always, for me, the solution to grow and change has always been outlined in the big book, and also some outside help as well. And so they told me this when I was new, and I didn't know any of that. And I was like, okay. You guys said some really interesting stuff to me too. Okay, if you're new and you hear our slogans and the things we say and we sound weird, I get it. Because when I was new, they were like, "More will be revealed." And I was like, "Okay, Merlin, is there a magic show after the meeting?" That sounds so ominous. And they said, "It's like peeling the onion." I'm like, "I have to cook? What are you talking about?" And it didn't matter. They were like, just do what we do. I'm like, okay. So I started doing what they did. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps to the best of my ability. I read my first fifth step when I was 6 months sober. Also, they told me, this is another one, they said, get in the middle of the herd. I'm like, what? They're like, if you're on the outside of the herd, you'll get picked off. What that means is get in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because if you show up late and leave early and sit in the back and don't take a commitment, there's, a good shot if you knew that you're going to drink. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I took commitments at every meeting I went to. I was your secretary. I was your chip person, right? And I was 6 months sober. I read my first fifth step. I don't even know what that thing said. But I told the truth. They told me something else when I got here. They said, we tell the truth, honey, through the good, the bad, the indifferent. No matter what, we tell the truth. If you lie, you're going to get loaded. And I was like, okay. And so I told this first sponsor all my little secrets, and I told her all my stuff, and I did the best I could. And I was very active in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? As I told you, I'm in the front of the room. I'm super service commitment girl. I'm on the board. Fortunately, I'm some people's sponsor. I was like doing the best I can. I know that my first sponsor told me to continue to take personal inventory because she wouldn't have been working the steps with me if she didn't. I wasn't listening. I was taking inventory, but it wasn't mine. I was in the front row of Alcoholics Anonymous, and 1 year sober, 2 years sober, 2.5 years sober, and I'm dying of alcoholism in the front row of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what does that look like, right? Because when left untreated, I have alcoholism and it demands treatment. I can either treat it with alcohol or I can treat it with a 12-step solution. If I'm not continuing to treat it with the 12-step solution by doing the work here, it will want to be treated by alcohol. And I'll be going crazy, and so I'm in the front row of Alcoholics Anonymous and I'm losing my mind. I'm collecting resentments like they're shoes. And I'm in a relationship that I have no business being in. Why do I say that? People ask me a lot, why do you say that? I say that because I had no idea how to love myself, so I had absolutely no idea how to love another human being. But I was doing it anyway. And I'm in this relationship. I have years of abandonment issues that needed to be unpacked in inventory and therapy, and nothing had ever been touched. And so I brought them into this relationship and assaulted another person with them. Not literally assaulted, but like I was a mess. I was not someone you wanted to be with. And I was in the bathroom of our apartment just like screaming because I was so terrified he was going to leave. And like I didn't know any of that. And I'm literally coming out of my mind, losing my mind at 2.5 years sober. I'm sitting in the meeting thinking, if this guy shares one more time, I swear to God, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to knife him in the parking lot after the meeting. Just like absolutely stark raving sober, losing my mind. And I heard people, so also when I got here, and my first sponsor, they told me to pray. Now, I don't come from a religious family. Like I said, my dad's Rod Stewart. I'm pretty sure our religion was the Rolling Stones. And he never took me to church. But I didn't have an issue with it. They told me to pray. And I was like, okay, right, I'm going to get A and AA. And so you guys gave me these prayers to say. They felt like nursery rhymes, but I said them anyway. It was the serenity prayer, the 3rd-step prayer, the 7th-step prayer. And I would say my little prayers, and I'd be like, okay, ready, break. And like I'd go into my little sober day, and then I'd come home, and I'd say my little prayers. But I would hear people in the meeting talking about having a conscious contact with a higher power. And I didn't know what that was, because I don't think I have it. Because I pray to this thing that you guys told me to pray to, because I'll do what you said. If I want what you have, do what you do. And so I think I'm doing what you're doing. But I don't know why I'm not getting what it seems like you have, what you've gotten. And I'm praying to this thing that I'm pretty sure hates me. Why do I say that? Because it killed my mom, but I'm not going to tell you that. That's what I think. On some level, I think I don't understand, because really well-meaning people are saying really well-meaning stuff to me as I'm a kid growing up in Alcoholics Anonymous my first couple years. They say things like, everything happens for a reason. And I go, oh, okay, right? But I go home and I think everything happens for a reason, so why did my mom die? That's not fair. But I'm still praying to this thing, but I can't tell you that I don't get it. But I'm trying to do what you do, and there's also women with time, and they're talking about feeling comfortable in their own skin. And it amazes me because I've never felt that way in my entire life, and definitely not right now, right? I mean, right now, yes, but like not back then. And because at 2.5 years sober, I'm walking up to the meeting and my heart is racing out of my chest and my little foot is tapping in my chair. I'm coming out of my skin vibrating. And I'm doing all the things that you do, I think. So I don't understand why I don't have what you have. And but when I got here, they told me we tell the truth, the good, the bad, the indifferent. And so I told the truth. I didn't hide behind the fact that I had a couple years sober. I pulled old timers aside in hallways like this, and I said, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know what's going on here, and this is how I feel. I don't know what a conscious contact is. I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. I'm screaming in the bathroom of my apartment. It literally feels like I'm screaming coming out of my chest. And I know this today. I was probably weeks away from drinking. I know that because I know the book now. What the book says is this. It says in a lot of places that we could drink, and the part I'm thinking of right now is in the resentment inventory, and this is what it says. It says, it gives me an order of events. It says that I harbor resentment, and then I shut myself off from the sunlight of the Spirit, which is like that amazing feeling that we get to have here. I shut it off. And then the insanity returns, and then I drink. It doesn't say I drink and the insanity returns. It says the insanity returns and then I drink. And by this point, not only had the insanity returned, it had moved in and bought property. Like, it's all that was going on, right? And so I asked for help, and it was suggested that I might want to go through the work again, not because anything was wrong with my first sponsor. That woman saved my life. But it's okay at any time to have a new experience because we have a way out, and it's outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got the sponsor that I have today, and I had asked for a big book thumper, and she was suggested to me. And this woman sat down with me. I was 25 years old and 2.5 years sober, and she had a rubber band holding her big book together. And I told her all my stuff. I'm like, how do you get a conscious contact with a higher power? And how do I feel comfortable in my own skin? And how do I stop screaming inside and screaming in the bathroom of my apartment because I'm pretty sure I'm going to drink and I don't want to die? And she said, she didn't even flinch. Our book talks about a man or a woman with a real answer, and this woman didn't even flinch. She just looked me dead in the eye, and I knew she had me. And she said, you know how you get all that stuff, baby? And I said, how? She said, line by line, word by word, page by page. I'm going to take you through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When it says write, we're going to write. When it says pray, we're going to pray. And she said, you better get a God, baby, because I'm going to fail you. And I was like, you're going to fail me? Do you need to sponsor yourself? Like, I was so concerned for her well-being. And she said, no, baby, it's because I'm a human power, and I'm going to fail you. You need a power greater than yourself. And she called it God, and I actually happen to call my higher power God. You don't have to. You can call it whatever you want. It can be any concept you want to. And she said, but you better get one. She said, but I have really good news for you. I said, what's that? She said, my entire job as your sponsor is to introduce you to a power greater than yourself that can solve all your problems, and that's the main purpose of this book, and that's what we're going to do. I said, okay. And she said, something else. I said, yes. She said, you need to pay attention, little girl. And I said, yes, ma'am. Because I'm from the South. That's just like how you answer. Like, take out the trash. Yes, ma'am. And she said, because I'm teaching the teacher, I'm training the sponsor. If there's something in this book you don't understand, I need to know. Because you're going to spend the rest of your life teaching this book to other women. What I didn't know in that moment what she was doing is she was dropping the keys to the kingdom in my lap. The book gets really heady. It gets like complicated to explain this, right? And people with time will know exactly what I'm talking about. It says that selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. And so everything that plagues me as an alcoholic, living a sober life, right? If I'm plagued by something, fear, resentment, like whatever, I can, doing the work, boil it down to self-centeredness. Think about that. Like, fear is negative imagination. If I'm like, oh my God, I'm afraid. I love to be afraid of stuff that is never going to happen. And like, it'll paralyze me, right? If I'm afraid, it's self-centeredness. I can't stop thinking about myself, and it's the very thing I need to do to be free. The kryptonite to that is service to others. She said, your goal is to spend more of your life thinking about other people than you think about yourself, and there you will be free. And so I said, okay, and she said, I'm going to teach you how to do that. That woman over-delivered on every single promise she made that night. Her and her big book and the rubber band that held it together completely changed me from the inside. She raised me here, and the women of Alcoholics Anonymous have raised me. We tore through the big book, right, and I did the most thorough inventory ever known to man. Oh, there was a whole section for people in the program on there too. The dude that kept sharing, he was on there. And I wrote all this inventory, and she told me when I started writing it, she said, I promise you that when you come to read your fifth step, we're going to be laughing about most of this. And I was like, really? Because it's not funny. And she was like, no, I swear to God, she was right. Like, I came to read my fifth step, and I was like, oh, God, I totally used to hate her, but I don't. And she was like, I figured. And she taught me this tool, this way to work inventory that has kept me free my entire sobriety, because that's how I write resentment and fears out now. Like when it says we continue to take personal inventory, I use that format, and like I get to remain free. So I did all this stuff. One of the steps I like to talk about is the ninth step. So I have made amends to my dad a couple times in sobriety, and my dad is the person I hurt the most. Obviously, I told you what I did to that man. I terrorized him. And I had made amends to him before. I tried. And now it's time to make them with Tanya, and I've done all this work, and I'm really ready to make them. And I write my little index card. I call my dad, and I'm pumped, right? We sponsor in and out of amends in our family, and so I call Tanya. I'm like ready to go into this amends. And I'm meeting my dad at a restaurant. And by this time, I know the book. The book says this about amends. It says that we're not supposed to have expectations of what happens on the other side. Like, I didn't want to hear that because I had some expectations. I was super excited about this amends because I was like, oh my God, I heard all your stories about how your amends went, and I was like, yes, it's going to be great. And the clouds are going to part, and Rod Stewart's going to cry, and we're going to hug, and like we're going to skip off into the sunset, and everything is going to be so good. That's not what happened. So I go to the amends, and I'm reading my card, and my dad, he's also got jokes. He's pretty funny. And so he starts cracking jokes. And he's like, did you forget about the time you stole my checkbook? And I was like, no, Dad, that's right here. And like, I'm saying my amends, and he's like, are you almost done? I'm hungry. And I was like, yes. And like I read my little thing and I do my amends and I go outside and I call Tanya and she goes, how did it go, baby? And I was like, I'm all defeated. I'm like, it was okay. And it was not super good. I mean, he just made a lot of jokes. And I don't think that like we're really in a place where he forgives me or anything. And like he keeps making jokes about me being gone all the time. And they keep teasing if I'm going to show up at Thanksgiving or not because I never showed up before. And she goes, you didn't break his heart over an index card. You're not going to fix it over one. And I said, yes, ma'am. What do I need to do? And she said, you made an approach. Now you get to be a daughter to your dad. I said, yes, ma'am. And she told me what I was going to do, and I proceeded to do it because I have jokes too, but I take this program very seriously because my life's on the line. And so I did all this stuff. I became a daughter to my dad, and I still am today. I used to leave that man calling all these places, not knowing if his kid was dead or alive. What I can tell you is that my dad has known where I've slept every single night for the last 17 plus years. Actually, when I sat down in this meeting, he asked me to text him when I got here, and I forgot. And when the meeting started, I don't ever take out my phone in a meeting, but I text him real quick because I always want that man to know I'm safe and okay. And I used to miss holidays, so I started hosting them. And I would run over and clean, like when he would move, I would move his stuff and clean his apartment. And it just consistency, right? Day after day, week after week, year after year, I was a daughter to my dad. When I was 12 years sober, I got a call. I was out at an amusement park, and it was Christmas time. And I got a call from my dad, and he said, I'm in the emergency room, and I need you to go and get some stuff for me and bring it here. Now, this is a shocking phone call for me because nobody in my family has ever been in the emergency room other than, we are very healthy other than this pesky alcoholism thing. Like, we're not a family that breaks things or, like, goes to, never. And I'm like, okay, are you okay? He's like, can you just come? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm the baby of 3 girls, right? I have a stepsister, my real sister, my biological sister, and me. And we all live on the same street in Studio City. And so we all live super close. And I get there, and I rush over, and I'm in the room. And I'm the only one there with my dad. And when I start to talk to my dad's a very strong man. And I talk to him for a minute, and I realize he's terrified. And I realize really quick that he thinks he's going to die. And I said, what's going on, Dad? He's like, it's not good. I have bleeding inside, and they think that I might not have long. and like all this stuff. And I look around and I said, Dad, where is everyone? Because my stepmom's not there, my sisters aren't there, nobody's there. And I said, where is everyone, Dad? And he said, I just called you, kid. And now that you're here, you can call the rest of the family, because I wanted somebody sane and sober in this room running point for the family on what could be a really terrible and tragic situation. But now that you're here, you can call them. And I was terrified, you guys, because how do you meet that moment? You know, one of our birthdays talked about losing parents, and how do you meet that moment, right? And it's scary as heck when you only have one. And I thought I did what you women in Alcoholics Anonymous and you men taught me to do through your example, and I showed up and I said, this isn't about you, this is about him. Like, just take a deep breath and show up for your dad. And after a while I went outside and I called my sponsor, and she said, how do you feel? Do you feel like there's anything you need to say that's happened? Like, is there anything you need to clear up? And I said, no ma'am, I am clear. And I've spent the last several years being a daughter to my dad. There's nothing I need to say except that I love him. And I showed up for my dad, and there was a medical miracle, and he didn't die that time. And the reason it really gets me choked up is it's something that we're looking at again. And I've continued all these years to be a daughter of my dad. And that man is so proud of me. And I am so proud to be his kid, and I'm so proud that I get to live this life. You know, last weekend I was at Disneyland with my niece and my sister. My niece is 15 now. I got to hold her in the hospital, and she's never seen her aunt drunk ever. And like, I'm the one she calls when she's terrified and she can't find her mom. Like, all of this stuff. I am just a run-of-the-mill, like, average Joanne alcoholic in this world, and I am so grateful for it. You guys You allowed me to be a daughter to my dad, a sister to my sister, an aunt to my niece, a sponsor to my sponsees, a friend to my friends, and a worker amongst workers. And I've gotten to build this great, big, beautiful life, and I would have sold it all for a bottle 17 years ago if you had let me, because I didn't know any better. If you want anything that sounds like what I have, it's available to you, and it's outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you very much. One more hand for Rikki, please. Another one.